What's cracking, guys? In this one I'm putting the 10-inch bunking risers and the CR high bend bars on my Softail Street Bob. So let's get to it and cue the intro. So the first thing to do is to take off my fairing. The next thing to do is to loosen off this tank bolt here so you can access the cowling, which covers all the wiring which you'll need to disconnect. So to prop the tank up, I'm just going to use this trusty old sanding block. So once you've got the tank propped up, just pull away this rubber cowling so you can access your wiring which you want to disconnect. So all this wiring leads up to your hand controls and to your digital gauge. So what you want to do is disconnect them. So after you've disconnected your wiring, the next thing to do is to take off your hand controls. So when you take the bars off, the cables aren't connected, obviously. Now I disconnect my blinkers from the hand controls. Alrighty, so now that I've disconnected the brake and the clutch lever from my bars, let's take the bars off so I can disconnect these hand controls. Alrighty, so now that the bars are removed, the first thing I'm going to do is replace the stock bushings with the Lucky Dave's polyurethane bushings. It's extremely important that you change out from the stock bushings whenever you put different bars on, because these are only really suited for stock bars and they're quite soft, so there'll be a lot of flex. So just to show you the difference between the Lucky Dave's ones and the stock bushings, as you can see, that's just a really soft rubber and there's a lot of flex in that. These are a much heavier duty and they're going to stop the bars from flexing when riding. So 2 up the top, and 2 down the bottom. Alrighty, so the gauge mount is just held on by some Allen head bolts. So the digital gauge mount will mount onto the 10-inch bunking risers, just using the stock hardware. So let's take off the hand controls. At this stage, I didn't have to disconnect any of the clips at the end of the wiring for them to fit through the bars. Alrighty, so now I'm going to open up the 10-inch risers and whack them on the bike. So the next thing I'm going to do is to install these studs at the bottom of the bars. Firstly, I'm going to apply some Loctite. And no, I didn't tighten the studs on the threads. I put them on the blank part of the studs. Before I mount the digital gauge, what I've got to do is change out this cable. I've been told that the stock one isn't long enough when you install 10-inch risers. So I had to buy another cable for the digital gauge, and this one I got from a website called Gorilla Cables, and it's 6 inches longer than stock. So I don't want to get them too tight, I just want to get them snug so I can line the bars up in the center, and also if I need to move them forward or back. First thing to do is to install the grip. Next thing, cowling. Alrighty, so now I'm going to set the bars up for my riding position.
Daddy!
Yeah, mate.
Daddy!
So I finally fed all the wires through the bars, and that took at least an hour. Shouldn't have taken that long, but it did. So now all I've got to do is reconnect all the wires. So I didn't film it because there was a lot of fumbling around, but I had to de-pin the right hand side blinker wiring just by taking that little clip off, just because there wasn't enough room to feed it on the inside of the bars. And the way that I fed the wires down the bars is I inserted this speaker cabling up inside the bars. I taped the wiring to the speaker cabling, and I just pulled it back through. Anyway, let's reconnect the clip onto the right hand side blinker wiring and hook it up to the bike, and then we should be done. Now I'm going to zip tie all these together so it's nice and tidy. Now what I'm going to do is just turn the bars from side to side to make sure it's not tight on the control wiring, as well as the clutch and the brake cable. So I will say that the stock cabling is close to being at its limits, being the brake cable and the clutch cable. Also the stock control wiring is close to being at its limits. The only wiring that I really did need to extend was the digital gauge wiring, and there's no tightness there at all. The 6-inch extension for the digital gauge was perfect. But if you were to go bars with a higher rise than I believe 13 inches, because these are the 10-inch risers, and I think the CR high bend bars add another 2.5 or 3.5 inches to the overall height. But if you were to go over 13 inches in a rise height, then you'd need to change out your clutch and your brake cabling, as well as getting extensions for your stock control wiring. But anyway, let's take a walk around the bike and see what the 10-inch bunking risers look like. And now I'll put the fairing on the bike and show you what the bars look like with the fairing. So that's going to do it for this one. I'm going to say out of all the mods that I've done to my bike, installing the bars was probably the most time consuming. I'm not going to say it was the hardest, it's just something that you've got to be patient with. The hardest thing about the bar install was running all the wiring on the inside of the risers. Wasn't difficult, it was just time consuming. I know it's not to everyone's taste and not a lot of people like the club style Harley. It's something which isn't really a big deal here in Oz. I haven't seen a lot of club style Harleys here. Obviously, as you can tell from all my other videos, it's a style of bike that I've really fallen in love with. I know there's people out there who are going to say it looks terrible, why would you waste your money? But hey, we all have our own taste. So keep an eye on my videos. In the future I plan on doing a review of these bars, and I'm also going to talk about why I chose these particular bars over any other bars which people run on their Softail street bobs to tie in with that club style theme. As always, thanks very much for watching, and I'll catch you on the next one.